Let me give this a few seconds. All right, welcome. This is Nicole Johnson-Zian reporting from Jerusalem. And I want to bring you the latest about this ceasefire, non-ceasefire that we are currently living under the shadow of, because that is precisely what is happening here, is that we are basically living under the fog of ceasefire. And as you may be aware, the ceasefire is on life support right now. Neither Iran nor the US have accepted the terms of the other side. Iran is basically saying, you want us to accept your terms? That would mean surrender. And President Trump is saying, the terms that you gave us, this is a piece of garbage. Okay, so that is what we are dealing with, calling it a piece of garbage. So that is where we are at right now. Well, and surprisingly, today being Monday, I seriously thought we were going to see way more action over the weekend because a lot has happened. And by the way, hello to Carol and John. Thank you for joining. But a lot has happened over the weekend. Now, let's look at just going back to Thursday. Iran started firing at the United Arab Emirates. So there were several barrages. I think even there were definitely people injured. I'm not sure if anybody was killed, but they were going after their facilities, their oil producing facilities, also potentially American outlets or bases, assets in the UAE. And that went on Thursday, and then again on Friday. On Friday, also Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there were several encounters between the U.S. and Iran. So the U.S. Navy said they were fired. 3 ships were fired at by Iran. They say it was unprovoked attacks. Iran said there was a violation there, and so they had to go out. In fact, so then the U.S. responded by hitting some sites in Iran, so port cities, and I think another one that is like oil related. So you had like that going on, and it was like Keshem Island or something like that. And another thing that is going on potentially is that the Karg Island, there's an oil slick outside of Karg Island, or at least according to satellite images. Iran denies that. But so there has been a lot of back and forth. Also, the U.S. Said there was no damage to their ships. Iran, by the way, is charging tolls there to get through the Strait of Hormuz. I think there was also a South Korean tanker that was fired at. They said they don't know the source of the fire. So there is a lot happening in the Strait of Hormuz. And like I said, I expected a lot more. There was also in Iraq, there was some skirmishes. Like I said, Kuwait, the UAE. So a lot of isolated fighting going on with Iran at the center of it, and the U.S. in terms of what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. They said they called off Operation Project Freedom for now, but now that this could all change, because now Iran finally got its side of the negotiation back. So the U.S. sent a proposal, and Pakistan is brokering the proposal. Then Pakistan said, okay, we'll get it to Iran. Iran took it. They were supposed to get it back, I think it was Friday night. They didn't until Saturday or Sunday. And the U.S. finally had a chance to look at it, and Trump said this is a piece of garbage. So he has also said that the ceasefire is basically on life support now, and that is all we need here to add to the uncertainty of a ceasefire that we didn't really believe was going to hold anyway. So let's get into some details. President Trump is supposed to go to China this week. He's going on the 13th. So what is that? That's Wednesday. Also, the U.S. is hosting Lebanon and Israel for talks in the U.S. Again, it's not the top leaders. It's not it's not the president and the prime minister. So it's still at the lower level, but it's inching up to the higher level. But all of that is happening at the same time to the backdrop of what is happening in southern Lebanon. Because speaking of ceasefire, now you definitely need to use the scare quotes when you're talking about the ceasefire in Lebanon. There's a lot of fighting going on there. First of all, and I just want to say hi to Kim. Thank you for joining from Alabama. That is awesome. So in Lebanon, Hezbollah, the terror group based in southern Lebanon, is using a new military tactic. I spoke about this last week. Did I do a live last week? I feel like I took like a week off, like just done. And meanwhile, there was so much happening. Okay, but so Hezbollah has now implemented this. They're using this drone that goes on a fiber optic cable. It's like this really thin, like dental floss cable, and so it can only go like maybe 10 to 15 kilometers, but it can be deadly. And I just want to add, I'm just going to put you guys on the screen. Hello, Cheryl from Tennessee. Thank you for joining, and Jerry, thank you for joining. Very awesome. Okay, so these small drones can't get very far, but they cannot be detected, and also they can carry about 6 kilograms of explosives. So they're small, but they can be deadly if they get to the target. And another soldier was killed yesterday, and in Israeli territory. Hezbollah had been limiting the drones to the soldiers, the Israeli soldiers fighting in southern Lebanon, but this one actually made it to soldiers in Israel itself. So the drones are getting, like, for some reason, they are more active as the ceasefire continues. And I just want to say hello to Susan from Mexico. I think that is the first time on my channel I've ever had somebody say hola from Mexico. Thank you so much. That's so cool. All right. So Hezbollah and Israel still going at it. Israel is they're doing targeted assassinations. They have told several villages, even today, to evacuate. They are demolishing villages in southern Lebanon. And so that is just ongoing on a daily basis. Hezbollah, for its part, is launching these drones. They are still active in southern Lebanon. There is like no giving up on what is going on in southern Lebanon. So Susan says, originally from Jersey, but still, I kind of like that I just got a shout out from Mexico. That was pretty cool. So despite Jersey, but that's awesome. So we've got New York, New Jersey, Tennessee, Alabama, and England at the very least going on. That's really cool right now. And then others, I'm sure. So, all right. So you've got that going on. I just want to also say, because I covered last week that there were 2 different desecrations of Christian symbols by Israeli soldiers in southern Lebanon. Now, in the one I did like a whole episode on, the one where they sledgehammered a crucifix. So that soldier was sentenced to something like a month in jail, was removed from the unit. The one who filmed was also sentenced. Now, another one just came out of a what do you call it, of a picture of a soldier trying to, like, get, like, holding a cigarette to a Mary statue. So again, that photo went out. But by the way, he was also sentenced to something like 21 days in prison, military prison, something like that. So Israel is going after the soldiers that are doing that. So I just want to make that clear and just follow up on that, as since we are talking about about Lebanon and what's happening there. Shalom, Miriam from Philadelphia. Nice. Thank you very much for tuning in. So anyway, with Hezbollah now successfully using these new drones in the north of Israel, who do you think, who's still very active, thinks, oh, that might be a great idea to implement? Hamas in Gaza. So they're not there yet. They haven't implemented, but this is one of the concerns that the military has. Now, Hamas has totally reestablished dominance in the Gaza Strip. They have control of the people that are. They have weapons. They're rebuilding, they're restocking, they are recruiting. So they are just all in now in the Gaza Strip. The Israeli military presence in Gaza, which is, if you look at the strip, it's between the Mediterranean Sea and just a couple miles inland on Israel's southern border, and then on the border with Egypt. But the military has something like 55% of the Gaza Strip is under Israeli control. Now, that doesn't mean it's completely sterile and safe, but that is where they are operating, and they're building, they have like barriers there that to prevent Hamas from coming across. But it's not fail-proof. But Hamas now they're entering a stage where they need to get to stage 2 of the ceasefire, which is that they need to lay down their weapons. But they never really said they would, and now they're saying, of course we won't. So it's going to come to a head there with Hamas. Now, that brings me to the Gaza Board of Peace, which is what Trump dreamed up for ending the war, the war that started on October 7th and then Hamas and Israel for 2 years. So he has the Gaza Board of Peace, which is going to be comprised of different countries for a few reasons. One is to provide military assistance so that it's not Israel then occupying the Gaza Strip and being the military force there, but they want other countries to come in as peacekeeping forces to then take over, so that the onus isn't on Israel necessarily, but it's on these other countries to provide soldiers and also to collect the weapons. So some countries have already offered that they're going to send. I think Indonesia said they would send troops, and Turkey can't wait. But of course, Israel's like, oh, no way, you're not sending troops here. Like, that would be a total disaster. They're like, supporters of Hamas. They host Hamas in the country, and Muslim Brotherhood, they're all on the same page there. They're like, Israel's like, no. But the United Arab Emirates is the first country that has put money down, or said it's going to pledge money. And I think it was like $1 billion. Was it $1 billion? Or I have to look it up again. But they said they are pledging money for the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip. Now, this is very interesting because we need to follow the thread of the UAE and what's going on. I don't know how much I said, because again, it's been a week since I've been on live, but I think I talked about this, that the UAE has basically put all its chips in with the US and Israel. So when the war was going on, they condemned attacks on their territory. And by the way, the UAE absorbed the most attacks from Iran of any other nation that was involved in the war. They got something like 80% of the missiles and drones from Iran went to the UAE, not to Israel. And then of all the Gulf states, it was like the Gulf in general was like 83%, and the UAE was the bulk of that. So during the war, they condemned the attacks, and but they didn't necessarily speak against Iran. However, since the ceasefire, there have been more and more voices from in the government, saying that Iran has shown what an unreliable partner or neighbor they are. And basically, they're putting their chips in with the West. Now, a few things have happened. And one of them is that the UAE is putting money now into Gaza for the rebuilding of Gaza. And that would be, in essence, paying homage to President Trump, because that was his idea. And he was the one recruiting the countries that would become benefactors there, and would provide the funding. So extremely interesting that they really have gone that direction. But I want to say hi to Walter too. Good to see you. It's been a while, has it not? So let me. So now there's something else going on. So you've got the UAE coming under attack yet again in this latest round, and the question, of course, will be: will the U.S. and Israel come to their protection when needed? If it gets to that, there may not have been any attacks today, at least not that I'm aware of. So, but there is another country there. You know what? Let's just go to the map, because the map always gives us the perspective. Okay, so let me go here. You can see that Iran is the large country in the region. Saudi Arabia, about, I don't know, they're about the same size. Okay, UAE is right over here across the Strait of Hormuz, by the way. And then Bahrain is so small that the name covers it's the entirety of the island if you don't zoom in. So I'm going to zoom back out, but you see where Bahrain is. So Bahrain and the UAE, just so you know, they're both allies with Israel. They both have normalized ties with Israel. They were the first two countries to jump into the Abraham Accords. It started with them, basically, the Abraham Accords with these two countries. So Bahrain, however, unlike the UAE, which is pretty monolithic in its expression of their faith, of their culture, they're very I was in both Bahrain and the UAE, and I remember going to a mosque in Bahrain. We visited the main mosque in Manama, and the imam was talking about how he comes up with his sermons, and he was extremely opinionated. Then we got to the UAE, and I assumed the same applied there. So I said, well, how does we went to the Grand Mosque, which is in Abu Dhabi. And it is, when I say grand, it is so opulent. I have never seen anything like this. But I asked the person who was giving us the tour there, I said, well, how does the imam of this, you would think it's like the key mosque in all of the UAE. And so who would get chosen to be like the imam to be there, or what, but he said that all of the messages that go out on Fridays are from basically the palace. It's like there's one voice, and all of the mosques will have the same message. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. But then when you dig a little deeper, and I'm sorry I don't have the numbers, but the Bahraini population is, I think, majority Sunni, but with a very, oh no, maybe wait, let me look it up. The population, the the leadership is Sunni, but a majority of the population, 55 to 60%, I just got it, are Shia. So what's happening now since the war is that Bahrain is on a spree of arrests of they're arresting people that they say are actively working for Iran and against the government. And that could entirely be the case there because they have a Shia population that would be sympathetic to Iran. There have been clashes in the past between the Shia and the Sunnis and the Sunni-led government. There was several years ago, I think, I don't know if it was during the Arab Spring, but there were huge protests in Manama. I remember watching an entire documentary about it. But again, they said back then that that was stirred up by Iranian interests. So these smaller countries are right there with Iran breathing down their necks right across these gulfs over here. Now, when Iran sent one of the missiles to the UAE, they when they launched a missile at the UAE in this last round in the last couple of days, apparently they put a sticker on the missile that said, "Hey Habibi, coming for you." I'll get the exact wording, but it was like a message saying, "Hey dear, you're next. Wait till you don't have the U.S. there to protect you." I'll get the exact words. Let me see. Um, mm, let's see if I can find it. Oh, yeah, that's right. Here, let's check it out. Let's check this post out. I'm going to share that screen so you guys can see it. Here you go. Habibi, which means dear or darling. When the US leaves, it'll be just you and me. Can you believe that? So they're basically saying, like, once this is over and once the U.S. is gone out of the region and onto something else, you got us to worry about, which could be entirely true. So let me see what Ohan has for us tonight. Ohan's got a joke. Okay, when the U.S. will start knowing how to make proper hummus, the Strait of Hormuz will open. Well, then you might be dreaming because even when I go to those health food stores to try to get good hummus in America, I just find it's not worth it. So we just eat our Middle Eastern food here in the Middle East. And when we go to New York, we get Italian, we get Mexican, we get Asian, we get all the stuff we can't get here. Indian, you can barely get Indian here. But you know what? When in the Middle East, eat the Middle Eastern food. Don't bother if you're over there. I haven't had good hummus in America. I don't know if anybody else has. But anyway, the Strait of Hummus would be easier to say than Hormuz, most likely. So um Walter says we love hummus from Israel. That's right. And then you can debate all the hummuses. Actually, if you ever want a good hummus tour in the Old City, you can go. We have done this before, like a hummus taste comparison. Oh, let me ask, Ohan, what's your favorite hummus in the Old City? Because we may or may not disagree on this. We may or may not agree on it. And Walter says, God has Israel's back. They don't know the Bible very well. Okay, but you know what? They're asking over there in the UAE, but what about our back? What about ours when the US leaves? So, all right. So we've got all of, this is just something to keep an eye on between Bahrain, what's happening with Bahrain, what's happening with the UAE vis-a-vis US and Israel during the ceasefire. So the ceasefire, which may or may not soon be ending. Now, as far as what's going on in Iran. First of all, they are saying that they still have 70% of their missiles and 70%, 5% of their launchers. That cannot be verified, but I have heard reports that they have repaired many of their launchers, and so they do say that they are still ready. And now this is despite the fact that Trump has said that they have destroyed between 70 to 90% of Iranian capabilities. But according to intelligence leaks, it's a lot, that it's definitely not that high. The US did not seize uranium or as, much as has been said, if any. Now, Israelis, so there's also some interesting things coming out of Israel. I just want to interrupt myself. That Miriam says, don't get Mexican food in New York. Okay, it's not really Mexican in New York, I understand, but I just kind of love that Tex-Mex stuff. And Ohan has answered his favorite hummus in the Old City, Abu Shukri. Okay. Now, what about Arafat? Kind of like it. There's my top two are Ramzi and Arafat. Ramzi to sit for sure. Arafat to buy and take home because it's like not as nice to sit there. But that is that's so funny. The big debate, right? Walter says, I surely believe that God will bless and protect those who support Israel. So you're saying that, I think, in relation to the UAE, I had jumped off the screen for a second. So, okay, that's great. And also, I just wanted to, I didn't put this before, but you said Middle Eastern food is our favorite food. I'm telling you, it is some of the best. But since I live here, I do miss my Italian food and other stuff. And okay, so now let me see. I had some other, let's see if I have some other stuff. We're definitely going to be watching if the Lebanon and Israel do sit down this week as they're supposed to. Of course, with Trump going to China, the question is, does that mean is if he cancels his trip to China, we know something's up. If he doesn't, and he does go to China, then I say the ceasefire will probably last a couple more days. I mean, heck, the ceasefire might last even longer, and it might just be a lot of posturing right now. By the way, I was going to tell you some stuff that's happening in Israel. It was revealed in the Wall Street Journal that Israel built a military base in Iraq, in western Iraq, close to the Iranian border, just before the war, and that it was discovered. It was in the desert, like nobody knew. But then some shepherd was like, wow, there's some strange activity going on. He's probably thinking he's reporting UFOs. And so the Iraqi military goes to investigate. They got close. They got into a fight with Israeli troops, and one of the soldiers was killed. Anyway, it wasn't revealed until after, but they used it to launch attacks. They used it for search and rescue, for logistics, things like that. So very, very interesting. Carol and John say, what about Abu Kamal for hummus? Yes, I said Ramzi. I was using the guy's name, but yes, Abu Kamal. That's who I meant when I said Ramzi. So I like we love to sit there, usually on a Saturday at Abu Kamal, who is run by Ramzi, and have his hummus, the falafel. He sometimes makes malube and has some great salads. But as far as like if we're on the go and just grabbing one to go, we go to Arafat, who is like a little bit down, like between the Muslim and the Jewish quarter, like meet. And a Christian, actually, it's like a convergence of all the three quarters. Okay, and Ohan, who clearly wasn't here 15 minutes ago, is asking what is happening in the north. So I will answer that question. Yes, you missed it. You did, but it's okay. I'm going to tell you just a brief recap is that the ceasefire in the north is is meant to be in scare quotes because the routine of the ceasefire is constant fighting, daily basis. There have been at least there's 4 Israeli soldiers killed just by the drone attacks. I was talking about those small drones that are run on like a small wire, and I think they use a camera and like a remote control, so they can really like go for the targets, and they have become a very deadly tactic. So that's one thing. Meanwhile, Israel is doing targeted assassinations. They're raising villages. They are telling other villages to evacuate. There's a lot going on. It's like on a daily basis. There's a lot of reserve soldiers there. There's also military in Syria, but we haven't had, as far as I'm aware, there haven't been any launches from Syria. Now, these Hezbollah rockets, in the beginning, they were not firing into Israel during the ceasefire. It's like the new rules of the ceasefire means you can still fight, just keep it to the southern Lebanese villages. I'm just making that up. But then Israel sort of violated that by the unspoken rules. They didn't really violate it because it wasn't really everything's violated. But what I'm saying is like the unspoken rules of keep it tight, keep it right here, and then everybody will look the other way. But they went after a Radwan commander in Beirut. And so then ever since then, it's been further eroding the rules of the ceasefire, so that now some of the launches by Hezbollah are actually getting into Israel. Sometimes there are sirens, which means it's probably a regular drone or rocket. But if it's going to be those FPV drones, they're not going to be detected. So the people in northern Israel are on alert because it's, these are even though they're I think it's 100%, not 100%, but I think they're back to school and back to life. Maybe there are restrictions, but in general, they're back. But some of the people there are saying like, you can't really go back because you never know when it's going to happen, and there's no reaction time. So, all right, Walter says, I'm glad that I just ate my daughter's great food. Yes, thank you for the pictures, because now I will not be hungry talking about all the great food from the Middle East. That is so funny. Foods from Israel. That is hilarious. By the way, as you said that, Walter, my daughter, I just heard the stove turn on, which makes me a little nervous because she's already cooked about 1,000 things today on her day home sick from school. So I hear more food being made, and it's almost 10 o'clock at night. Unnecessary. Riots unnecessary. Okay, one more thing I want to show you, and then I think I've got it wrapped up. Let's go to the map because that tells you that's going to help me show you what I want to say here. Okay, so here we're going to look at Iran, the borders of Iran again. And we've been talking a lot about the southern and western borders, but let's go north, because right here you have the Caspian Sea. Now, everybody's focused on the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian or Arabian Gulf, etc. But here's the Caspian Sea here in the north, and you've got Azerbaijan on right here on the water. And who is this Russia over here? I'd have to back it up more. Yeah, I guess this is part of Russia. And okay, so what is happening is they are using the Caspian Sea to get their goods out. So whatever they can't get out because of the blockade going on in the Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, they are using the Caspian Sea, and they're getting things to Russia. Now, as you hear, there's like the ceasefire over here is being broken because there's a fight going on in the kitchen. Okay, so now let's look at the southeastern border, which is Pakistan. And Pakistan is supposed to be the negotiator between between Iran and the U.S. And another thing that I've heard is they're getting things out by land through Pakistan. So those are their workarounds for these blockades. So I don't know how successful. I don't know how limited they are or how much damage is being done because of that. Not sure. But anyway, I saw a question from Ohan. What is the situation between the opposition and Israel? What are the statistics for the coming elections and if it will happen, the election? Yeah, so I just heard, now they're already campaigning. Everybody's campaigning already here in Israel. I heard that the election is not until October, which I guess isn't that far away. Oh, it's like 6 months. Okay, so I would have thought it was sooner because Israelis start late with the campaigning compared to the U.S. But the polls are like this: there's a slight chance that the opposition could get enough seats together so that Netanyahu will not be able to build the next government. But his Likud party, I think, is still leading in the polls, in almost all the polls. So he still might get the most votes for his party, but the other parties might be able to get enough together if they agree. So there are a couple of party mergers, and this is really insider baseball for you guys who are interested in like the geeking out on politics. But Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid have again gotten together. They have put their parties together, and so they're going to run together. They're trying to get Gadi Eisenkot to join them. He was in the current government. Oh, somebody drank all my water. Okay, he was in the current government. In the current Knesset, and everybody seems to really like him. But he created his own party, and he wants to run alone. However, he is apparently talking to some other parties like Avigdor Lieberman, Israel Beitenu. So it's just a matter of if they're going to unseat Netanyahu, it's going to look like the government which was run by Naftali Bennett, and I think it was 2023 or 2022 maybe, when they all, like 8 parties got together to get more than 60 seats, to get the majority, and they actually held on for a year. But it's still early. It's still too early to talk about how these seats are going to shape up. But it's on the way, and a lot of it, like what the opposition is campaigning on right now, is that the current government has not taken responsibility in specific ways for the October 7th failures, and they have not commissioned an inquiry into exactly what happened, how this could have happened to the country. So anyway, so it's sort of building up around that. It will also that was so weird, that email I just got. I have to check that out. It will also come down to the ultra orthodox being drafted or not into the military. So the opposition is going to run on that, and they are going to say that, like, basically they will allege that Netanyahu is not forcing the ultra orthodox to join the army, and because he wants them in his coalition. So that is how it's going to shape up. It's going to be about October 7th and the ultra orthodox enlistment into the military. I think that will be the two main issues. And who knows, there might be another war to talk about between now and then, for all we know. So anyway, so that is a roundup of what's going on around here these days. And Roy, thank you. I appreciate that. It's been fun getting this all out of my system. Thank you for allowing me to share with you. Appreciate it. So anyway, tune back in to find out how this ceasefire is holding up or not, because in a couple days, I think we're going to find out. Like I said, dates to watch for. May 13th to 15th. Is Trump going to go to China or not? Or if he stays home, it means there's something could be happening. But if he goes, I think we bought ourselves a couple more days over here. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And